So let's get started. Problem number 1, properties of equality. Which of the following statement correctly justifies the steps in the solution below? So for this problem, let's just go through it and let's actually talk about what they did. So in step 1, what property was used?
The distributive.
Yeah, distributive. Okay, cool. In step 2, what did they do?
Addition.
What did they add?
24 and 26.
That was 24. So negative 24 and negative 26 made negative 50. However, that is not the addition property. And let me explain why.
Property.
What did you say?
Combining like terms.
Yeah, that's combine like terms. Because remember, addition property is when you do the same thing on the left and the right. And you have all those properties like addition property, subtraction property, division property, multiplication property is when you do the same thing on both sides. But here we were only doing things on the left side, so that's just combine like terms. Okay. All right. Then what did they do?
Add 50, which is addition property.
Yeah, then they added 50 to both sides, so that's addition property. And then finally,
Division.
Division property. Okay, so which one's correct?
D.
D. D is correct. The division property is used to create step 4. All right, this one was really just like I kind of mentioned this yesterday. You personally don't have to write down all those steps, but you have to know what they are because they might give you a question like this one. So do I have any questions about how I did this one and how we got our answer? Okay, awesome. Question number 2, problem number 2. Solve for W. We have 2 fractions equal to one another. What is that first step I need to take?
Cross multiplication.
Cross multiplication. So that negative 3 goes to the right, positive 4 goes to the left, and I get 4
parentheses W plus 5 equals negative 3 parentheses negative 2W plus 6.
Perfect. All right, so that was step 1. Step 1 was cross multiply or multiplication property. But there's one more step I need to take. What's that? Distribute. Good. Good. All right, so let's distribute 4 times W and
4W
mm-hmm.
plus 20.
Good. And same thing on the right.
6W plus, negative 18.
Good. And on the right side, you had to be a little careful because we have some negatives, right? So negative 3 times negative 2 gave me positive 6. And then negative 3 times positive 6 gave me negative 18. Does anyone want me to very quickly clarify those rules for multiplying and dividing with negatives? Say it in the chat privately if you would like me to quickly go over that. Okay, very quickly. A positive times a positive, what does that give me?
Positive.
Positive. That's just normal multiplication. Positive times a negative.
Negative.
Is negative. And negative times a negative.
Positive.
Goes back to being positive, exactly. Okay, so that's always the rule. If you have one of each, so a negative and a positive, or a positive and a negative, if you have one of each, it'll be negative. But if you have 2 of the same, it'll be positive. That's the rule for only for multiplying and dividing, by the way. This does not apply to addition or subtraction. Questions on that real quick? Okay, cool. All right, back to the problem. Now what? What do I do? Step 2.
Subtraction property.
Subtraction property. So what am I subtracting?
6W.
6W from both sides. I subtract 6W because of two reasons. Number one, I want all of my variables on the left side, so I have to move that W over to the left. And why am I subtracting versus anything else?
Because there's a is a positive 6.
Mhm.
The opposite of a positive is a negative.
Exactly. You're always going to do the opposite. Since the 6 is positive, you subtract. 4 minus 6 is
2.
just 2?
W.
Just 2? W?
Plus 20.
There's something,
Negative.
something, yeah, negative 2W. Careful. Negative 2W. Think about it. If you have $4 and I take away 6, can I do that? Or is that going to be?
Is that mine was backwards?
Oh, that's why. I remember what. Okay, you're good. All right. Now what do I do?
You subtract 20.
Good. Another subtraction property. Minus 20, minus 20. Negative 18 minus 20. What does that give me?
Well, since I did it on the
Negative.
other side.
Okay, those who did it this, what was that, Raymond? You can say that again.
Negative 38.
Negative 38. Good. And then finally, I divide. Division property.
19.
And we get 19. We divide by negative 2 on both sides. And just like I was saying before, a negative divided by a negative goes back to being a positive. So that's W equals positive 19. Questions on number 2? Cool. All right, moving right along, number 3. Okay, so this one kind of on a test you would have had to like drag it and drop it so that everything is in order. But what I'll do on this is just kind of fill in the blanks and cross them off as I go. So what would be the next step in this solving?
Distribution.
Distribution, yeah. So distributive property is step 1. And which of these boxes tells me my next line?
4x negative 3.
4x minus 3 equals x plus 9. Exactly. So we're done with that one. Okay, step 2,
Subtraction property.
subtraction property. What am I subtracting?
X.
X from both sides.
3x minus 3 equals 9.
Were these in order? These are kind of in order, aren't they?
Sort of.
Okay, so 4x minus x, remember that when x is all alone, there's one of them. So this is minus 1x. 4 minus 1 is 3. So that's why we get 3x minus 3 equals 9.
Addition property.
Addition property goes next. These were totally in order. My bad. Wow. They added what to both sides?
Plus 3.
Plus 3 to both sides. Good.
Oh, they are in order.
Yeah. Okay, so 3x, oops, I didn't add. 9 plus 3 is 12. So that was also step 4 right here. And then final step was division property, which gives us our final answer of 4. Okay, so again, on the test, this was more like a drag and drop situation. Obviously, you can't really do that on a PowerPoint, so this is all we could do. Do I have any questions on this one? This one, by the way, even though it had a fraction, notice how by distributing, it also magically got rid of the fraction at the same time. So this like killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Any questions on this one?
I was about to put like 4/2 and 3/2, but since I saw like everything that it was already written down, I just left it like that.
Right. This one already kind of had, you could have, if you were doing this on your own, you might have done it a different way. But since they already had those steps written down for you, you kind of could tell what would happen next. Now, here's one question. How exactly did they get 4x minus 3? Can anybody explain that?
Multiplication.
And what are they multiplying?
1/2 times 8/1.
1/2 times 8/1. 8 times 1 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. And what's 8 divided by 2?
4/2.
Just
But
4.
Just 4, yes.
Just 4. Same thing with the 6. 1/2 times 6, well, that's 1/2 times 6/1, which is 6/2. 6 divided by 2
3.
is 3. When you multiply things by 1/2, it's the same as dividing by 2. It's the same thing. You just divide it by 2. So that's how we got that second step. Okay. All right. Moving on to number 4. If you wanted more fractions, you got them in this problem. Here we have 2 fractions with different denominators. What do I do? Good, Jeffrey, put it in the
We
chat.
have to combine, we have to find the least common multiple.
Yeah. Multiply by the LCM of 2 and 5. What is the LCM of 2 and 5?
10.
10, exactly. So 10 is kind of our magic number. If you multiply by 10, all those fractions will just go away.
Wait,
So here we go.
Ms. Lopez,
Yeah,
can it also be the least common denominator?
they're the same thing. LCM, same thing as LCD, least common denominator, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're kind of creating the same denominator, and then it cancels out. So good point. So here we go. 10 times 3/2 y. And again, I'm writing this all out so that we can do it step by step. You might have done this completely in your head, and that's totally fine. If you feel good about multiplying with fractions, then great. But sometimes it's nicer to see it written out so that we can kind of like do it step by step. Okay. Now, I did this problem with group 2, so if you were in group 2, you guys should know how to do this by now. I want to hear you. I want to hear you participating. All right, so I'm multiplying all the way across by 10. What do I get? 10 times 3/2. What's that?
30 over.
You get 15y because you turn the 10 into a fraction, and then you cross multiply, which would give you 30/2, which if you divide it, you get 15y.
Good. Yeah, that's how we multiply. We turned that 10 into 10/1. You multiply straight across, you get 30/2, and 30 divided by 2 is 15. So if you're wondering how we got 15y, that's exactly how. All right, now what? 10 times 12.
120.
120. 10 times 7/5.
14y.
14y, good. Oh, I forgot my y over here. There we go. 14y. Same idea. 10/1 times
200, negative 200.
Good, and then negative 200. Now, just quickly to break down how I multiplied that fraction, 10/1 times 7/5. We go straight across, that's 70/5, and 70 divided by 5 gave me 14. By the way, I have a little trick that might help you guys when you're dividing by 5. Anytime you have to divide by 5, something you can do is, so we were doing 70 divided by 5, right? You can take that 7. What's 7 times 2?
14.
Yeah. See how that's what we got? 14. And it works with any number. So if you're doing like 60 divided by 5, 6 times 2,
12.
12, and that's the answer. It's like a little trick in case you wanted one. All right. So here we are. We got rid of our fractions. What do I do now? Step 2.
You
Subtract
subtract
14.
Good. I heard it from a couple people. We're going to subtract. We're going to move all our variables to the left. So I have to subtract 14y from both sides.
Which will just be y.
Right, because 15 minus 14 is 1. And when you have 1y, you can just write y. Y plus 120 crosses out, and now I'm left with negative 200. All right, so I should only have one more step. What's my last step?
Subtract 120.
Good. Minus 120 on both sides. So what is
Negative 320.
Positive 320.
Here's the question. We're dividing. I mean, we're not dividing. We're subtracting, my bad. We're subtracting. And I kind of use this analogy in group 2. When you're adding and subtracting numbers, think of yourself on an elevator that can go above ground, and it's like a really tall building, but it can also go really far down. Okay, it goes underground. And if you're on the negative 200th floor and you're subtracting, am I going to go up on the elevator, or am I going to go deeper down?
Deeper.
Deeper. So if I'd subtract those two numbers, would I go into the pot? Would I all of a sudden shoot up into the above ground, or am I going to be still negative?
Still negative.
Still negative. So it's negative 320. Answer choice A. All right, I'm seeing one question in the chat real quickly. Why did I multiply by 10? Why did I put 10? Why was that the number we chose?
Because it's the least common multiple of 2 and 5.
Exactly. And remember that when I chose that number, I had to multiply it to everything. So really what I did was I multiplied this whole entire thing by 10, and I kind of had to distribute that 10 to every single part of that equation. So that's why I did step 1. Any other questions? Okay, awesome. That was question number 4. Let's go ahead to do problem number 5. Problem number 5 is a literal equation. So we had to do some kind of moving things around. This is like when you're rearranging your room. You got to in order to move your bed, you got to like move your desk first, and then things get in the way, and you got to make sure you move things in the right order. It's a whole thing. So I'm moving things around. I'm trying to get R1 by itself. But R1 is inside of these parentheses. So what should I do first? Because I can't really touch what's on the inside of those parentheses. So which variable can I touch? Which variable can I move over? The t, yeah,
T.
exactly. I can move the t. I want to get everything away from the R1. I don't want to move things towards the R1. I want to get them away. So what operation would allow me to move the t away to the other side?
Division.
Good. Why am I choosing division?
Because it's the opposite of multiplication, which is the parentheses.
Good. Parentheses mean multiply. So what I'm really doing here, this is R1 plus R2 times t. So to get that t out of the way, to move it over, I use division, because division is the opposite of multiplication. Now, whatever I do on the right-hand side, I have to do
To the left.
to the left-hand side. So that is why, that's why I get what I get. Division property is the way to go. So what happens is when I divide by t, I eliminate the t. And now on the left side, I have d over t. And on the right side, I no longer need those parentheses because I'm no longer multiplying. All I have left is R1 plus R2. So the only one that needs to go away is
R2, which is we have to do a subtraction property.
subtraction property. Same idea. This is the opposite. Since R2 was being added, the opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract by R2 on
And
both
you can't
sides.
subtract D over 2 by negative R2. So you just leave it like that.
Yeah, we just leave it separate. So D over T minus R2 equals R1. D over T minus R2, that's answer choice
C.
Questions on this one? This one was tricky. I mean, literal equations are always, they're tricky. You're only going to see one in your whole mid-year assessment. So if this is the one thing that you're a little bit confused about, there's only one question on it. It's multiple choice. If you're stuck on it, that is totally okay. It's just one problem. Any other questions on this one though? Cool, cool. Number 6, we have an inequality. This is an OR inequality. So this was like a drop down. You just had to pick the correct numbers. So I couldn't take a good picture of it. So we're just going to kind of write the answer. So I have negative x over 3 less than negative 4. I'll start with that one. I need to solve for x. What's in the way?
Wait, Miss Lopez, it's not the same question on the worksheet.
Oh, really? What do you,
No.
let me see, hold on. For number 6. Oh, you're totally right, huh?
But we'll still solve it if you already have it up.
Let me see if I skipped it. That's what happened. Oops. Well, okay, we'll come back to it. I accidentally skipped it on the on my PowerPoint. Or no, on the worksheet. Long story short, Miss Lopez made a mistake. That's okay. Okay, let's do this one and then at the end we can come back to the other one. So I have an inequality that we solve very similar way to an equation. And then at the end, we'll have to see how I graph it. So let's just start by solving this inequality. What should I do first?
Distribute.
I'm going to distribute. Good. 3 times x minus 5. What does that give me?
3x negative 15.
Good. Is less than 5x plus 7. Okay. What do I do next?
Subtract the 5x.
Good. Minus 5x on both sides. 3 minus 5. What does that give me?
Negative 2x.
Negative 2x minus 15 is less than 7. Now what?
You add this 15.
Okay.
Which will give you negative 2x less than 22. And you divide, and since the negative 2 is a negative, yes, it is a negative 2, so we switch the sign.
Very good. That's the most important step right there. When you divide by a negative number, so if the negative number is in the denominator when you divide, it's on the bottom. That's what matters. If the numerator is negative, that's not the problem. The problem is when we divide by a negative number. So here I'm dividing by negative 2.
Which will give us negative 11.
Which will give us negative 11, and the sign is now going to be greater than negative 11. Okay, so that was the very critical part. That sign had to flip, which means if I'm greater than negative 11, which answer choice am I looking at here?
D.
Answer choice D. Good. We had an open circle pointing to the right. Open circle to the right. Questions on this one? Nice job, Ajira. And if anyone was kind of following along, if you didn't do this on your own, if you didn't get to this one, make sure that what you see, you understand. So if there's any questions right now, I'm happy. We have time. We're doing good on time. All right. Number 8. Okay, this one's a tricky one. This was on your topic test like a while ago. But let's go ahead and read it. So, a fuel company supplies fuel in 2 different sized tankers. The first tanker can supply X cubic feet of fuel in 1 trip, and the second tanker can supply Y cubic feet of fuel in 1 trip. The first tanker makes M trips daily, and the second tanker makes N trips daily. What does mx plus ny represent in the expression mx plus ny over m plus n? Okay, there's like a lot going on here, right? Like this is one of those problems where you read it and you're just like, you have to read it like 5 times for it to make sense. So I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things.
Yes, highlight.
The first tanker can supply X cubic feet in 1 trip. The second tanker can supply Y cubic feet of fuel in 1 trip.
We highlight M trips daily and N trips daily as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So I'm a big fan of pictures. I like to represent things visually all the time. So I'm just going to draw like a little truck. A tanker's like a little truck, right? Here's my little truck. Okay. Miss Lopez can't draw, by the way. This is like really bad. It looks like a bug. Okay, so there's my tanker. And this is tanker number 1. It can supply X cubic feet. So it has X amount of fuel inside.
And by the power of 2, right?
Say that again?
Is it X by the power of 2?
It's X cubic feet. So this just means cubic feet is a measure of volume. So this is basically saying that it can carry this much fuel on the inside. It fills up with fuel. So I'm not going to worry too much about the units right now, because that's not what the question's asking for, you know? Okay, so this tanker goes to and from a location, right? And in 1 trip, it makes how many trips each day? How many trips does it make?
Daily, like every day.
How many?
7.
7? Where's that 7? I don't see a 7. How many trips does the first tanker go on every day?
It doesn't say.
No,
It
but
just-
it gives us, what is it? What variable do we have?
Oh, 1 trip.
It only goes once? This
1
is the
trip
tricky part.
daily? 1 trip a day?
Well, read carefully. It's saying that it can carry X fuel on 1 trip, but keep reading. How many trips does it actually make?
Is there supposed to be a number?
There's no number.
A day?
I'll read it to you guys again. The first tanker can supply X cubic feet of fuel in 1 trip. So if it only goes once, it can carry X amount. But then keep reading. And then the second tanker can supply Y cubic feet of fuel. The first tanker makes M trips daily.
Oh, we don't know how many trips. It's just a M.
It's just an M. That's the amount of trips. So X fuel, M trips. Then there's the other tanker. The other tanker,
Makes N trips.
similar idea. This one carries Y fuel, Y amount of fuel, and it makes N trips. So this is one of those weird things in algebra where there's no numbers. You're not supposed to know the actual amount. It's just representing a scenario using algebra and variables, okay? So then it's asking me, what does mx plus ny represent? So let's think about it. I'm gonna actually like turn this into some numbers and we'll make this a little bit easier. So I have 3 pens in front of me. I'm holding 3 pens. You guys can see them? 3 pens. And I'm taking these pens to my sister who is across in the other room. And I'm gonna do this 5 times a day. I take 3 pens over to my sister. Then I come back. I take 3 more pens over to my sister. Then I come back. And I do that 5 times. How many pens do I end up giving to my sister?
15
15. How did you do that? What did you multiply?
by 5.
5, because how many trips did I take?
5 trips.
5 trips times 3 pens, that's 15 pens total. So now let's think about it with this fuel situation. X amount of fuel times M, if I multiply those two things together, I get the total amount of fuel that the tanker can bring to that location. Same thing that Ajaira just did. If these 3 pens represent the fuel, okay? This is how much fuel I'm taking every single time. I take 3 fuels, I take 3 fuels, I go back. I take 3 fuels, I go back. I take 3 fuels, and I keep doing that over and over and over again. When you multiply those two numbers together, you get the total amount of fuel. So what I'm trying to say is that let me use my pen. M times X, when you multiply those two things, is the total amount of fuel that I take in one day. And same thing with the other guy. N times Y, okay? Y is just how much you can take in one trip, but when I multiply that number by N, it's how much he can take in a whole day, because he's gonna take multiple trips each day. So this is the total fuel in one day. So what about when I add all of that up together? What about when I do mx plus ny? If I put it all together.
Both of them is what both of them take in one day.
Exactly. It's the total fuels for both tankers or both trucks in one day. And that was this is one of those questions that you got to really just think about it, kind of rationalize it, kind of put it all together. But what is my answer here?
B. At first I circled A, but once I started rereading it, I chose B.
What's another way, if let's say you didn't have the time to go through it this slowly, but I can eliminate C and D because C is talking about weeks and D is talking about months, and those two values don't show up anywhere in the problem. The whole problem when you read it is talking about, okay, one trip, that comes up, and one day, that comes up. So you could have also just made it, even if you had to guess, whenever you have to guess, and it happens, I guess all the time on tests. If you have to guess, make it a smart guess. Get rid of 2 answer choices at least so that your chances of getting it right are 50-50 rather than 1 out of 4. Okay, if you have to guess, totally understandable, but make it a smart guess. Don't just pick whatever random one you want. Try to eliminate it. Eliminate answer choices. All right, I know this one was confusing, but do I have any questions on it? Okay. Cool. Here's another word problem. Anita is filling a small pool for her kids. Currently, there are 60 gallons of water in the pool, and she's filling the pool at a rate of 50 gallons every 5 minutes. The pool holds 200 gallons of water. Okay. Couple of different things we have to do in this scenario. So first of all, I always look at my answer choices and I try to see where they got their numbers from. So I can see that the 200 matches with my 200 over here. And that goes for both of these answer choices. I can see that my 60, all of these 60s match with this number over here. But then I see a couple of different numbers. I see 140, and then I also see 50s, and then I also see 10s. So what do I do with this information? 50 gallons every 5 minutes.
What I did, I divided.
Okay, and why did you divide it?
Because that is the total gallons every 1 minute.
Right. This is 50 gallons every 5 minutes, but when you're talking about a rate of change, a unit rate, you want to know what it is for 1 minute. So 50 gallons every 5 minutes is how many gallons for 1 minute?
Negative, well, 10.
It's 10 gallons per minute. Okay, per minute, 1 minute. So that's where they got the 10 from, or the negative 10 in this case.
Why is it negative 10?
And let's talk about that.
Negative.
Let's talk about that in a second. But so far, which one is the only answer choice that has everything matching?
A.
A. So that's what where I would be like, okay, I think A is the answer, but now let's actually see what these numbers mean. The pool holds 200 gallons of water. Currently, there's 60 gallons of water in the pool. Okay, so if there's already 60 in the pool and we're filling it, right? We're adding to it. We're adding 10 gallons per minute. The total amount is going to be 200. So this is kind of like the forwards way of writing this equation, but they have it a little bit backwards because what did they do with that 10?
They subtracted it.
Yeah, notice they subtracted 10m on both sides.
Is it because
leaving
there's already 60 gallons?
Yeah, so what they're kind of saying when they wrote it, the way that I would say this is that if you take the total amount that the pool can hold, right? So 200 gallons is how much the pool can hold, and you take away the amount that you were adding in the first place, you would be left with the amount you started out with, which was 60. So it's kind of telling a story, right? 60 is the amount you get when you take the total and you subtract whatever was added. Okay, so there were a couple of ways to do this problem, but at the end of the day, when you get to a problem like this, it's always a good idea to try to match those numbers to what you see in the problem. So I was able to match the 60, the 200, and the negative 10 by kind of like going back and forth and then seeing which of those answer choices matched 100%. Okay, any questions on this one? It's a little bit, it's like this one's kind of one of those, like, it can be confusing, but
It is sort of confusing.
it's a little confusing, yeah.
Because there's already 60 gallons and it says the pool holds 20 gallons of water. So if you take away 200 minus 60, it will give you 140.
Right, that was where they tried to trick you with that 140. Oops, that 140 was there as a trick. Okay, so you just got to watch out for those. All right, I believe this is the last one. Yes, okay. It takes Daphne 25 minutes to assemble a model plane. During her workday, Daphne takes 30 minutes for lunch and one 15-minute break. Which inequality could Daphne use to determine the number of model planes, P, she can assemble in her 8-hour workday? Okay, 25 minutes to assemble a model plane. So I'm playing a game of match, right? Here's my 25. Cool, that one matches. Then she takes 30 minutes for lunch and one 15-minute break. So what did they do with those two numbers?
I added.
Yeah, because you're kind of thinking, okay, she works for 8 hours, right? That's her total amount that she works each day. In that day, she'll work 25 minutes for each model airplane. And she also takes 30 minutes for lunch and 15 minutes for a break. So we can add those two together and put them together. That's 45 minutes that she's not working. Okay, so we're adding that to the total. So we know that I'm adding 45, which means I can get rid of two answer choices because we definitely want to add. But then, okay, I see my 8. Why is there also a 480?
They multiply by 60.
Yeah, why did they multiply that by 60?
Because there's 60 minutes.
1 hour equals 60.
Yeah, this is 480 minutes. And why was it important to have that in minutes?
Because what, how you say her name?
Daphne.
Daphne is spending 25 minutes to assemble a model plane.
Right.
And everything is going by minutes instead of hours.
Everything is going by minutes, so everything needs to match. You can't have hours, you have to have it using minutes. So that's where we got that 480 from. Answer choice D is the winner. So see, this was another type of problem where I was trying to like match everything up and see which one made the most sense and questioning where they got each number so that I can figure out which one's correct. All right, well, we are out of time, but just as a reminder, you have one homework assignment due tonight and then another one due on Sunday night. And some of you guys already started it and you guys realized that question number 1, I made a mistake and none of these answers are actually correct. So skip number 1, put something random for it. I'm not going to count it towards your grade, okay? Since I made a mistake, skip number 1, but make sure you do all the other 8 questions. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your days. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day, Miss Lopez. See you tomorrow. Well,
Thank you.